This is Viewpoints by Hennessy, a podcast featuring the latest thinking from the team at Hennessy Funds. My name is Jay Coulter, and joining me for this update is Ben Cook, who's the portfolio manager for the Hennessy Energy Transition Fund and the Hennessy Midstream Fund. We're going to discuss the relationship between AI technology and energy demand. Let's jump right in. Ben, with the proliferation of AI technology, it's driving a massive need for power. What is driving this trend, and how will AI power needs be met going forward?
Yeah, great question, Jay. Advances in AI computing capability are creating opportunity for both productivity enhancement as well as cost efficiency across the entire global marketplace. And as a consequence, we're seeing huge demand for AI computing power, which in turn is driving the build out of data centers that house this important technology infrastructure. AI graphics processing units, or GPUs, which are housed in data center servers, are computational monsters requiring multiple of the power needs relative to conventional central processing units. And as a result, the pace of data center build out will continue to drive meaningful growth in electric power demand. And we believe this trend will drive the expansion in power generation capacity both here and abroad.
Ben, the next question has a couple facets to it. Can you frame the magnitude of the electric power demand increase? When did you first notice this trend? And what's the call on energy resources? What could it look like in the short term?
Yeah, the potential rise in power demand is probably best reflected in what we're hearing from the utilities that provide power to these AI data centers. According to Constellation Energy, data center electricity consumption totaled 2% of U.S. total demand in 2020, and that number is expected to grow to as much as 7.5% by 2030. This would imply a 1.5 to 2% growth rate, which is a sizable increase considering the fact that electric power demand growth has been flat over the last 15 years or so. As to the supply of power ultimately fueling this growth, we see access to the grid and its primary sources, natural gas, wind, solar, et cetera, as the main contributors to power growth near term. In the longer term, the build out of natural gas, additional wind and solar resources, and even nuclear and maybe even hydrogen will play a part over the longer term. And we see this as a great opportunity for investors to participate in a longer term growth opportunity.
Can you expand on the fuel supply mix that will underpin that power demand need going forward and put the context into the magnitude of the growth in each of those categories?
Yeah, sure can. Near-term power needs will be met using a mix of fuels currently supplying the power gen industry. So at present, and this is per the Energy Information Administration, it's about 40% natural gas, 18% nuclear, 16% coal, and nearly 30% wind and solar. Going forward, though, as part of our underlying view on the energy transition and further renewable penetration, we anticipate renewables as well as natural gas will gain at the market share of coal as those coal retirements continue. Importantly, until utility scale battery technology improves, natural gas will remain a critical component of that primary fuel mix, ultimately propelling market share gain through the end of the current decade. Importantly, data centers require 24/7 uninterruptible power, and that must be cooled to ensure operating performance. These growth drivers will continue to drive uninterruptible natural gas fueled power needs going forward.
And Ben, the demand for natural gas was already set to grow meaningfully on increased LNG export volumes before these AI related needs began to take shape. Given the rise in AI related demand, how has your outlook for natural gas changed?
Yeah, using some basic assumptions, increased power needs fueled by natural gas could potentially add an additional 5 to as much as 10 BCF a day of additional natural gas fuel demand associated with AI by 2030. Current U.S. supply is about 100 BCF a day, so we're talking about an additional 5 to 10%. With LNG export volume set to increase by almost double the current rate of 13 BCF a day through 2030, incremental AI demand could conservatively add another 30% to incremental natural gas needs by the end of the decade. So again, this underscores a very important growth driver for energy investors.
Ben, let's wrap up with this. What are the most attractive ways to play this AI power demand growth trend going forward?
Yeah, Jay, we think there's a lot of ways to win here. We think demand for natural gas, the growth trends there are underappreciated, particularly in the companies set to benefit from increasing natural gas usage. Both upstream producers and midstream transportation providers will benefit from rising natural gas usage. In the upstream sector, we like Antero Resources, EQT Corp, and also Comstock Resources. And in the midstream space, we like Williams, Kinder Morgan, as well as Cheniere Energy. Each of these equities are holdings in our Energy Transition Fund and Midstream Fund, respectively.
Ben, thank you for your time for this episode of Viewpoints by Hennessy. For more great video content like this, make sure you're following Hennessy Funds on LinkedIn and check out our website, hennessyfunds.com.